Homeschooling in high school, kind of a popular discussion point. Everyone doesn't continue into the homeschool high school years. So join me today. You're welcome to put your comments, your questions, your ideas down below. And I want to introduce myself before we get started. I'm Teresa Wiedrick, the certified life coach and homeschool mentor found here on the Homeschool Life Coach Instagram account. On this week's podcast episode, the Homeschool Mama Self-Care podcast episode, I shared about why I homeschooled, the unexpected challenges I experienced over my almost 2 decades of homeschooling, and the lessons that I learned, how I overcame a lot of those challenges. And it is much more than just a discussion on learning in homeschool or home education. It's a lot about how I embraced my own emotions, really went into the deep dive of who I really am beyond homeschool mom and all the things that are often tripping people up in the homeschool experience. If you are a new homeschool mom, tomorrow, the first year homeschool webinar I'm offering is designed really for the first to second homeschool year transition. So if you happen to be going from the first homeschool year, moving into the second, and this past year wasn't quite what you thought, well, I've got 9 mistakes that you can avoid by joining this webinar. You can have a conversation with me about the 9 mistakes that can help you feel less stressful or stressed in your second homeschool year. So you're invited to join me. But I want to get started. So I am going to invite Natalie to join me in having a conversation all about homeschooling high school and transitioning from the junior high to high school years. So welcome, Natalie. If you have any questions, you're definitely welcome to put your thoughts or your questions down below.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Okay, great. I'm on. So nice to be joining you, Teresa. Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm really excited to talk to you today about homeschooling, high school, tweens, and teens.
Tell me your oldest kiddo. Oldest.
My oldest is actually 9.5. So
Yep.
my own children are not yet in high school, admittedly. Where my background comes in from are my previous years teaching in a public high school biology, sciences, dance classrooms. So
Yep.
I've really enjoyed working with teenagers and educating them and learning about what makes them tick and how they learn and how they think and how they want to be treated through their learning. And then how can we now take those tools and adapt them to the homeschool setting so we can really have thriving and connected relationships with our children.
I bet you're going to see this right now. You probably already are. Your oldest is a daughter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're probably already seeing her move into that individuating stage or that phase.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, I think like there is this 9-year-old transition where we go from wanting to be told how to do things, what to do, and then they just all of a sudden don't.
It's wild. I was just talking to Angela from the Homeschool Unrefined podcast, and her youngest is in high school, and 2 are in high school, and 1 is in college. And even though we know that that's part of the thing, we're supposed to be prepping them to think independently and live their own lives. It's a little surprising to say that
when they actually want to.
What is going on?
Yeah, I think that is like the deep down number one goal that we have. We want our children to be able to thrive on their own, that when they're an adult and they come up with these situations where there's no answer and they just have to navigate how to go about problem solving when there's literally no right answer. We want them to be prepared for those moments independently, and yet it's that journey, that process that is going to get them there. And that's where things are a little bit unclear for most people. Like, okay, well, how do I set up these core understandings for them so that they have something to lean into?
Yeah. Your kind of your base values. And yet, one of my base values was always independence and autonomy. And I don't think that I knew that. I didn't know that that's what I was going for. I don't think the word autonomy was really a common cultural discussion when I started parenting. but freedom was, and it seems to still be. And for me, it wasn't necessarily about any, like, it wasn't particularly about religious freedoms or anything like that. It was more about living your life or your life on your own terms for your own reasons. And we were going to go travel and we were just going to do things outside the box, as they say. And we did. What I hadn't found is that they would actually not necessarily see the world the same way that we do after the fact. And yet the values of really embracing, like being authentic and really showing up intentionally in their lives, they're doing that.
Yeah, I think that these underlying core values, like we can't just make our children think the way we do. And even though we may have shared values, they may come at it from a different perspective. Now, I've
Yeah.
heard you talk so many times about the Enneagram, and like, for example, my daughter's a 6, and I could not figure that out for the longest time. Like, I just could not relate to the way that she was seeing things. But we did
Yeah.
have these core underlying shared values,
Yeah.
and we were coming at them differently. And so when I understood, oh, it's a matter of helping her understand how she thinks about these things so that that can really flourish in her, that was where we finally, I could be like, oh, good, we got to win, because I couldn't make her think like me.
No, I know. Isn't that
It's
wild? I
good.
mean, and I think I remember it's good, but it is like, whoa, what's going on here? I thought my role as a parent meant I was supposed to take you by the hand and we're just going to go do this thing and you'll follow along. That was how I understood it. And then I discovered not so much.
Because that's how it starts,
Yeah.
right? They really do fully depend on us for everything, from like that baby on your chest with the nervous system regulation to like breathing. And then you're teaching them, okay, well, like this is when we stay in bed, and this is when we're going to get up, and this is when we're going to eat, and this is how you're going to hold your spoon. And you do need to give all of the whats, and then you need to give the whys, and you need to give the hows. But then you need to start providing more and more and more white space as time goes on. And that's the key for our team.
I think I just lost.
Oh no, are we still there?
We're back. Yeah, we're
Yeah, our
good.
teams
Um,
want to figure this out in their own way, but they need us to step back so they have space to do it.
that's right. I like your word,
Yeah.
white space. So I often refer to margins for moms because I think we need margins in our lives. I know I'm of the I should say I was of the I got to check off all the box, get everything done because I determined it should be so, even though I hadn't actually factored in if it would fit inside a 24-hour time block at all. And the answer was it didn't, but I tried to make it happen anyway.
Right.
Um, but so for me, I recognize that moms really need that margin in their days to just breathe, but so do kids. And that's actually the beauty of a homeschool high school is that kids can think about their lives, think about what matters to them, or actually be bored sometimes, have moments of boredom that actually feed the solitude. They can be one and the same, they're not necessarily, but when we get that solitude, we start thinking about, well, who am I? What am I really all about? What do I want to do? And for me, I've noticed that with every child, and they're all different, very different, that right there really did help them to know what the next step was and how they were going to approach their education or just their life in general. And I think that's the biggest benefit of homeschooling in general is that you're moving towards the real kids in front of you.
Yeah, and helping them learn who they are. And I like to say it like having a healthy template of themselves, like they know who they are in a really healthy way. Because when we have this healthy template of ourselves, then it doesn't matter what messages are coming in, what somebody else says about you, what media and advertisements are telling you like perfection is, or what you see on Pinterest about what like a beautiful homeschool is supposed to look like, or what learning is supposed to mean. When you have that healthy view, it's like a filter that you can determine if things are truth or not, or if it's helpful or not. And that is one of the best practical things that we can go about developing in our upper elementary children, tweens, into those early teen years, because when they have a healthy view of themselves, then they can make decisions from this place of confidence. And
Right.
now they also have the ability to hold their own perspective and hold the perspectives and values of others with openness, with non-judgment, knowing that it's okay for people to be different. You don't need to like become something to fit in. And these are all like the underlying core values that are behind critical thinking, which is what I love to talk about. And I have a whole ultimate guide with it that talks about 5 of these things that you really want to establish in your child for that healthy template.
Do you remember what it was like moving into junior high years? Do you have an experience around that time?
I
Because I remember
Sorry, you just cut out. You remember what? Sorry.
it being really, really tumultuous. Like there was just a lot of emotions. And, you know, I remember acne and thinking everyone's staring at me. But actually, now I know everyone's thinking the exact same thing. Everybody's worried about everyone staring at them and they're all experiencing this.
I do remember, like, I feel like as I tap into that, I like feel that self-consciousness.
Yeah.
Um, but I actually experienced quite a bit of like judgment from others that caused that to be the way I looked at the world at that time. Like we were in dance and I would have people saying things about like everybody looking the same, for example, and I would feel that from the outside as if like I was taking on that belief system and that view. And this is why I think that it's so important to me that we heal aspects of judgment and that we heal and teach our kids to actually like really view themselves so that when those outside messages come in, I think it does come from like a personal place. I'm so glad that I've come around and like been able to heal from those things. But I do remember that at that time. And I remember a lot of pushback in high school from my teachers because I was a question person. Like, oh, yeah, well, why not? Or what about this? Or like, what about this one situation where that's an exception? I liked to think critically, and I did think critically for a while. And then I saw how that was really suppressed from the outside in. And then I went into university and became a teacher, going, oh, okay, you tell me all of the information. And my research paper is literally taking all of these other research papers and creating my own. And that was what school was like for me. It was regurgitating other people's ideas.
Well, that's
And
interesting. You ended up going back into the system then.
yeah, I don't know if it was like Stockholm syndrome or something. But eventually that rebellious side of me, oh, sorry, was like, I need to do things in my own way. And so I ended up first teaching in my own way, which was like kind of received interestingly. But I started to really teach critical thinking to the high schoolers, and they loved that. And I saw them flourish in ways that other years and other classes, they just weren't. And then I wanted to do that for my children. So when they were starting to get into that homeschooling age, I was like, why would I send you off to somebody else to learn how to become a robot like I was when I could just, you know, let you explore that wonder and that curiosity and let you think and have
Yeah.
no limitations around the way that you learn. And so, yeah, that was that was the big reason for the shift. And being able to let people think is and teach people how to not limit, because sometimes we just unknowingly pass on those patterns with how we were treated without even
Oh,
thinking about it.
yeah, 100%. In fact, yeah. What I'm thinking in the last few days as I'm prepping both to have a conversation with you, and last week I had a conversation with Pat Ferenga, or maybe I released the episode. So an interview with Pat Ferenga, the co-author of Teach Your Own, and then I'm having a conversation with Angela and Marin from Homeschool Unrefined, and they're talking about their book, Think Differently, or Think About Learning Differently. And I'm thinking about why did freedom matter so much to me, and it didn't really have to do with not wanting to be in the confines of a school system, even though it wasn't a place that I flourished. I had a really tough family upbringing though, so there was that. But I think it's more about recognizing that we aren't held to this place of unique individual when we're in a system. And it's that we get to be who we fully are when we're at home. And we are so surrounded with the energy of, I see you, I hear you, I understand you, I care about you. Most times, because we're not always actually as parents with our kids. We have our moments, 100%. But the opportunities are extreme. Like they're off the charts compared to what will be seen or how they'll be seen, heard, or understood in a system, in an education system, no matter how lovely some teachers are or well-meaning they are, because some of them really are.
Yeah, I mean, I was in the school system, and I should hope that I would be considered one of the good ones. And I have lots of friends who are teachers, and they're amazing teachers. And some areas
Exactly.
are also different than others. But I really like what you said there about the freedom really comes down to accepting of who you are and accepting yourself, and having those around you like accept you for who you are and like what your strengths are, and maturing those strengths. Because even somebody that has bully like tendencies, and you're like, oh, my kid's turning into a bully, you can mature that and refine that into extraordinary leadership skills, where they can like rally people together. And instead of shaming people for things that we don't like, we can mature them and accept and grow those qualities. And I do agree that that is the type of freedom we're talking about, intrinsic freedom that we get with homeschooling.
Yeah. And for the compliant kids, which I've noticed in myself, but I've noticed it with other people, that we tend to mention the child that was compliant and went with our homeschool program and the successful homeschool child, because they are like the, shining star of all the things we bring to this homeschool experience. And they actually could be disadvantaged over the long term, because they become accustomed, whether it's in our homes or whether it's in institutions, to just sit back, be quiet, follow the rules, you're good. And so then you're not necessarily developing your fullest self when you're doing that. You're more likely to, if you're you at high school, saying, I don't know if I agree with this. And you're more likely to, and maybe you're going to invite more conflict in the meantime, but that might be a good thing, because then you're actually considering, what do I really think? Who do I think I am in this context? And whereas a compliant child might not.
I think that's a super important point, that our middle of the road children are often forgotten. It's like that classic middle child, where they sort of slide under the radar, and
Yeah.
we forget about really acknowledging and noticing who they are.
Yeah.
And oh, yeah, I think that's a really important aspect of homeschooling, is seeing each of our children. And when you have more than one child, you know that it's not you.
Yeah. You have to have at least one of each. Yeah. Yeah. So many thoughts. I have so many thoughts. First of all, I'm just glad that Wi-Fi is working, because you're on a homestead. I'm on a homestead. They have a fire apparently that broke out last night about a mile away or something again. We are living in quite an interesting summer. So it's nice to have Wi-Fi. Nice to chat. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
So
really glad that you're safe.
yeah. So far so good. We're safe. Our house might not be all summer, but we'll see. Um, but having said that, the junior high to high school transition, what I've seen at core is, I mean, I've written a lot about this myself, but I could maybe put it into a synopsis, and it's called Gordon Neufeld's book, Hold On to Your Kids. His book is like, mwah, exactly what we want to gear toward in junior high, high school years, is to focus on the connection, which will not be seamless. And with some kids, it will be less seamless than others. But if we can create opportunities for connection with them and see, hear, and understand them, and then also invite them to see, hear, and understand themselves, like giving them boredom moments or solitude or those margins you say, then they can get to know themselves a bit more and connect in with themselves. You have that on your book list. Tell me about that. What brought you to that book?
It's
Clearly,
yeah, I think the same thing that brought you and so many others to that book. Actually, I came into that book through the door of Gabor Mate, Dr. Gabor Mate. So he's local, so I've heard of him in the Vancouver, BC area. And I was reading some of his other books and finding his view to be very fascinating. And so when I saw he had a book about essentially parenting, then I was definitely on board. And it really resonated with me because of the way that that concept really clicked into what my experiences were and what I was seeing was really important and that is that if you want to have connection, you actually have to let go and let them come to you in a way. I mean, this is like not really a summary of the book, but essentially this is what I gleaned most from it. This idea of white space came from when we were renovating our house, and a friend of mine, she's a designer, and I said, hey, I'm thinking about this wall to wall built in. And she said, do not take that thing wall to wall. It will look terrible. It will like fill the space in a way that makes it too busy. You need to have white space on either end. And so you have this openness where anything can happen. And when we create that for our children and they can start to flourish into who they are through things like boredom, through really just knowing that they are accepted for who they are, like warts and all, as sometimes we say, right? Like maybe they are really challenging, or they are a super strong-willed child, or you have one of those children that happens to be in like the 20% of experiential learners and has to know the end from the beginning and it's exhausting. Those children, when we can give them space to be themselves, that will make them feel loved, heard, noticed, valued, and connected to us because they feel like we know them and we get them. And that's how we actually can really create deep rooted connection by giving them through in school, like through learning, it would be through the process of gradual release, slowly releasing them to spread their wings and fly, not a quick rip the band-aid moment, but through like an actual process. And I have like a 4-step process to gradual release, which super quickly is like you model it for them, walk them through it, facilitate as they go through it, give them like some feedback, and then let them do it. Don't
Yeah.
say anything, let them reflect on it themselves.
Much like medical school.
Yeah.
But that's very much the way they would do it in
Yeah.
medical school. Probably the most effective approach to learning. If you really want to learn how to do, you're going to have to figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
Mistakes
And so we
yeah.
can
And I
do
really
that in our homeschools.
yeah. And dare I say, I think we should for our kids because I know it feels hard to believe that they will truly grow up and leave your home. Because I still am like, really, do y'all have to leave? You could just like stay in the basement, which was never my intention, and I always wouldn't be one of those parents. But now I'm like, maybe you could come. But they do grow up, and so you have to actually equip them to do that. But I know that when we're talking about junior high, high school, and anything related to homeschool, people want to know, yeah, but like tell me about the actual transition moving into the academic, or how do I equip them to be prepared for college, or the transcripts and the portfolio and the scholarships and all those discussion points. And so from your perspective, because you are homeschool or you're a high school teacher for a number of years, and you said in dance, biology and chemistry, was it?
Biology and dance were the main ones, but through up to grade 10 in sciences, you learn all of the sciences.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Oh, by the way, which dance was it? What
Well,
kind of dance did you do?
I did like everything, like the tap, jazz, ballet, Polynesian, musical theater, like the whole kit and caboodle. So then when I was teaching, I would just kind of create generalized things. I guess kind of more like jazz would be sort of the best area to
Yeah.
call it, but because
Yeah.
it was a range of abilities and a range of grades all at the same time. So it was quite the juggle. And now like 3 in a homeschool, 6, whatever. 30
Yeah.
easy. Try doing like 10.
You need to do to challenge yourself is just have 21 more.
Yeah. I've already proved it to myself. We're good. But I think, yeah, the fears around what if I'm the one to limit my child, right? That's what it
Mhm.
comes down to. Because all of these little ideas around, like, okay, well, what do they need for their transcript? What universities or colleges do they want to apply for? What scholarships are available in my area? What are the requirements here, there, and everywhere? Do they need to write a thing? Do they need to go in for an interview? What, like, do I need to call them and talk about homeschooling? All of those things are unique to every single province and state. So it's not something that I've personally wanted to like dig into the nuances for each of those because that's a lot.
Yeah.
But I like to go deep. I like to go into the depth of things. So there
Yeah.
is the practical doing of that. And I really believe that, yes, as a parent, we need to support our children with figuring out how to walk through that because that's a big thing for them. However, they definitely can be involved in that process and
Of course. Yeah.
can really get the ball rolling on what they want to do, where they want to go, if they want a gap year. It is possible to get scholarships and have a gap year. There are plenty of people who specialize in this um,
Yes.
that I would refer to for that. What I would say is, I think that dealing with the fear around limiting our children is a big deal because I really want to just hit on this truth for a second. And that is that nobody can limit you from your potential of being your best self. And so for
Well,
your child, you can't limit them from being the potential for their best self. Yes, we can run into roadblocks and have to like peel back belief systems that we've adopted, like you're not good enough, or if you fail, everything's going to be bad. Like you may need to overcome some of these things, but it's always a potential and a possibility to flourish. And so your child will flourish despite whoever is like their teacher at school or at homeschool or like in a co-op or whatever. They still
yes.
always have their potential. So it's okay. Just do your best and it will still turn out. Um,
I love that about that. There is no limit. It's you. But if you're doing all the things you're talking there, we've been talking about connecting and helping them to see, hear, and understand themselves, have white space, they'll have a load of time to figure out who they are and what.
yeah. And I think that nowadays our generation is a lot better about not um, shaming our children into becoming a certain thing, that there is a lot more openness into, well, what makes you tick and what makes you thrive and where will you be really happy going in every day and putting your best effort into this without it actually like feeling like work, because we are called to work and rest in our lives and play and all of these things. And so we do need to find something where we really like can contribute and feel good about that. And so helping our children recognize that early on is really important. And I know it can be really challenging when we have children that are multi-passionate and want to try all the things, and it can get really expensive to like sign up for this and then they drop it and sign up for this and then they drop it. So finding ways that you can allow your child to explore. A lot of us learn actually by cutting back on finding out what we don't want.
Yeah.
And that really helps us define what we do. So knowing that and being okay with that process, I think really allows us to prepare our children's hearts for what they want to do as they exit homeschool, whether that's graduating or whether that's just moving on to the next stage, whether that's taking a year off, whether that's exploring their entrepreneurial goals, whether that's trades, whether that's college or university. All of these are good things. And if it allows their children to thrive in community, that is a worthy goal.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's life on their own terms anyway.
Mhm.
But I people. Because I am open and available to anyone. I will walk alongside anyone from any background and various people around the world. I have heard stories like, I want my child to be in the 90th percentile of the standardized test and they're 5 and 7. Or my husband really wants something of my kids academically, even though he's not doing the primary homeschooling, but the expectations are really high. Or I see my child is really interested in such and such into a certain program. And so I'd like to know how to prepare her. And then I find out she's 7. And I'm like, oh, girl, you got so much time. And for you really do have time, and it's not even like I'm trying to be silly. I saw my own daughter who was just determined to go in one direction. And then 6 months before she graduated, she was intending to do sciences. And then she went into a ballet program. So she's been, and we were all but like, just what just happened? So I think, and honestly, you don't want to lock your kids into something just because they said I always wanted to be a dot dot dot. And I know for myself, I didn't graduate high school with all the prereqs for me to go into a Bachelor of Science. So then I got the prereqs before I went into the degree. And my husband didn't do medicine, didn't have all the prereqs for medicine. He went into pharmacy and then discovered he didn't want to be there or stay there. And then he got the prereqs to go another direction. So there's a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, and I grew up dancing. I loved it. And I thought I had to give that up to pursue my Bachelor of Science. But then when I went into education, they now had dance in the school. So I could teach dance. So I paid my way through university teaching dance, but then I was able to teach it. And now look, did I waste these degrees and waste this time in the classroom?
Yeah.
No, because that education afforded me a different perspective into our homeschooling space now. And we can like come together and support each other from all these different angles. And I can support moms through how you go about teaching because of that background. So I'm not using any of that the way I thought I would. And that's great because all of this is a journey. And I actually have one warning, one idea here around expectations that you mentioned, if I can share real quick.
Sure.
And that is that when we have high expectations for our children and we have this like future idealistic version of what's possible for them, and they start to adopt this future idealistic version of where they're hitting, like shoot for the moon and land among the stars, that kind of thing, is actually, it backfires into a really harmful thing. Because when we know that learning is lifelong, right? And there's no end. You're going to be learning right up into your last day. So as you learn more, guess what happens to that goalpost? It's moving up to, and you're never going to get there. And for a teenager, when they realize they're never going to get there, they're never going to hit that mark that they want to be, they'll always be chasing something better. What's the point? Why should I bother? And then you start to see like depression and anxiety and some of these really harmful belief systems like, I'm not good enough, I can't do that, or I can't live up to your expectations, because we're teaching them through this language that they need to chase this future version of themselves. So it's actually the best way to go about it is to look back at how far they've come and really encourage them and say, hey, last year, look at this work you did last year. Look at your paragraphs here. And now look, your essay writing. This is fantastic. Look how far you've come. That is motivating for them to move forward so much more than, hey, get to this future version that you can actually never hit.
Yes. Did you, that reminds me exactly of, oh geez, I can't believe I'm blanking. The Institute for Excellence in
Oh,
Writing.
Andrew Pudawa, does he talk
Yeah.
about that?
Yes, he does. He said if you want to help a child understand where they've come from, or you want them to review, or frankly, to test a child, test them against themselves, but not against other people. Because, like, what is the point of standardized testing? You know what I know. It's just, it's for the system. It's not for the specific child. It has nothing to do with the specific child. Not really. There's just a bigger, institutional comparison thing. Who gets resources? How do they resource things? And whereas reviewing, or maybe like he said for writing, he said at the beginning of the year, ask a child to write to a certain prompt. I'm thinking of older kids here. If you want to train them into essay thinking, or like creating a thesis around something, then have them write something. And then at the end of the year, when you begin to go deeper into that topic, or you begin to explain how to actually expand upon your thoughts, then have them do the exact same prompt, and then help them to see, do you see how far you've come?
Yeah. It could be as informal as like my oldest daughter has just a little booklet where she writes short stories. And she's even just gone back in herself and said, Mom, can you believe it? This was my
Yeah.
first story. This is so much better now. Now I have romance in my stories, and I have these like different bigger words that she's using. And so it is really powerful. It's that self-reflection piece. And when our children have practiced being self-reflective, it gives them self-awareness. And now they don't rely on other people to support them in what's good or what's right or what's best for them or what's healthy. They can have that awareness in and of themselves. So that is a great tool for like core values right there.
Yeah. Oh, we could keep having this conversation. I think because I got to about 2 of my 15 points. But high school homeschool discussions or anything related to, that transition phase between, I don't know what it is, grade 8, whatever that is, depends on your child, but 12, 13, 14,
Yeah.
13, 14, 15, and onward, I think that's a really useful conversation point. We should definitely return to
Yeah,
this.
I would love that, Teresa. I love chatting with you.
Me too. I do too. We could actually make it real. We could actually do this in real time since we live in the same
Yeah,
province, barring a something.
yeah, I would love to travel and visit you.
Oh yeah, yeah. Maybe right now would be an unwise,
Well,
but I really like to do that in real time. So let's definitely do that. Wouldn't that be fun?
yeah,
I from Instagram that I've known, and I've actually thought I would absolutely love to travel around the world, all over United States and Canada and various places, and meet people in real time. I'm like, ooh, this is so exciting. But let's do that.
yeah.
And I think Whitney, I can see that you've said something that I cannot read because I'm that many years. For kids, how do you intentionally build in regular self-reflection? What would you say?
Oh, I have a few free resources actually about this. One of them, if you want to go to my website, homeschoolteachingsimplified.com, there is a 3-day challenge, communication connection upgrade. And on
Right.
the third
Yeah.
day of that challenge, there is in the workbook that I provide, there is a traffic light reflection. I've used this with 8-year-olds and I've used it with 18-year-olds. And even 18-year-olds appreciate and understand this concept and they like the visual. So with the traffic light, you have red, yellow, and green. And so one thing that you can ask them is after a particular unit, lesson, day, year, whatever it is, you can ask them, where are you green, good to go? Where are you yellow? Like, let's slow down. I have some questions here. Versus where are you red? Like, stop. I don't get this and I need serious help. And then you can have little ones like draw a picture inside of the actual traffic light. You could have older ones write something beside it. And that is a really, really strong self-reflection piece. There are other ones if your kid's like, that seems like baby to me. If they're like, no, I don't want to do it like that. There are other ways that you could do it too. You could ask them to do like an exit ticket for the day or the lesson where they write down a little reflection about it. You could have them keep a learning journal where they talk about things that
Yes.
felt really easy for them, things that they are struggling with still. And actually, I really like classical, like, or not classical, but like classical to me. I guess I've always done things differently. Like having some sort of formative assessment or descriptive kind of assessment, like not a test, but like that can be really, really good for self-reflection if you treat it like this is ongoing, this is a snapshot in time, this is a check-in to see where we're at, and it's not about judgment at all, and it's not about like what's right or wrong or if you're good or bad. This is all about what's going well and how can I as a mom inform my teaching for tomorrow. Do we need to do this again in a different way? Are you good to go with this? And so having like a little quiz or a check-in, even like a spelling test, like those can work for self-reflection because your child, it's like giving them a mirror, like, oh, I thought I knew how to spell that, but when I actually put it on paper, I didn't. That is a self-reflective piece
Yeah.
too.
Interesting you say that because there is really a stigma against testing, but I had kids ask me for testing. Go figure. And they wanted to know where they stood in certain things, and it was useful for them. And I, of course, boom, are you kidding me? Really? You want to test? What do you mean you want to test? And, or give me a grade or give me a something. I'm like, okay. But it was for them and they used it for, yeah, that's really
Yeah,
good. I
and
love
the
that.
best way to do that is not through a number, it's through written or verbal descriptive feedback. And as a quick note, the best way you can do that is through like a sandwich, like something really great, something that they can work on, and then something really great again at the end, so that you're noticing and naming all of those aspects. Sometimes they don't notice the good things for themselves. And so to name those good things too is really important.
That's really beautiful. I know that Whitney knows me, so she knows I'm going to say journaling.
Yeah.
So I really her version of journaling. That's a really clever way to do that. So I think we should return to this conversation and discuss the other 13 points.
Obviously, we can go on and on. So I would love to join you again. Maybe we could do a podcast series on it.
That is an inspiration.
Yeah.
Inspire. Let's talk about that. Where do people find you?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at Homeschool Teaching Simplified. Just like click probably in the description later for the replay. homeschoolteachingsimplified.com. And you can find my podcast, Assured, How to Homeschool and Not Get Burned Out by It. And also I'm on YouTube at Homeschool Teaching Simplified.
Yeah, brilliant. Yes, it was such a pleasure chatting with you. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me, Teresa. Chat soon.
Have a great day.